Hello, everyone, and welcome to the May 13th regular Town Council meeting of the Town of Vegreville. I call this meeting to order at 7:03. First up, I'll be looking for a motion to adopt the agenda. Thank you, Councillor Lemko. Is there any additions or deletions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Next, I'll need a motion to adopt the minutes of our last regular meeting. Councillor Bullock makes the motion. Any errors or omissions within those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, our first supplemental, we've received 3 letters this week. I'll read one and I will name the names of that wrote them because they're all exactly the same letter. Dear Mayor Tim McPhee and council members, I am writing to bring to your attention some concerns regarding political neutrality in our public spaces here in Vegreville. The primary goal is to ensure that crosswalks, flags, or any other public property in the town of Vegreville remain neutral in their representation. Only the federal, provincial, and municipal flags should be raised on public flagpoles. Crosswalks should only be painted in standard white stripe patterns, and decorations or displays supporting political, social, religious movements, or commercial entities should be prohibited. This measure aims to safeguard the safety, health, and welfare of the community. Public consultation on these issues seems to be non-existent, which has only served to erode trust in local governance. The lack of transparency and inclusivity is quite disheartening, and I do not believe the values exhibited through these discussions adequately describe the values of our diverse and loving community. In light of these principles, I urge the Town Council to revise its decision on certain public spaces that are not currently politically neutral, similar to the municipality of Westlock. And then I guess this is a quote from the town of Westlock. Our council members have a significant responsibility to represent the diverse perspectives of our community. Remaining neutral in all matter ensures that town council serves all the constituents equally, regardless of backgrounds, belief, or affiliations, while building trust in local governments. Thank you for your consideration. Considering my position on this critical matter, and I ask your response by May 20th. Signed, Miranda Ketchum. We also had one from Charlotte Holick and Edie Jagolic sent one to all the council. So I'll take a motion to receive and file to start. Councillor Berry makes the motion. Is there any comments on these letters? Councillor Berry.
Thank you, Worship. I'm not certain if I totally agree with the fact that if we don't recognize anybody that's being neutral. I think there's some times when we have to give respect to different groups. One of the points that is made in this that just struck me as you were reading it out, though, is the area of or decorations, displays supporting political, social, religious movements or commercial entities should all be prohibited. Well, that would go directly against the Provincial Elections Act, where we are permitted to put out election signs. That's political. I see signage go up for pierogi suppers. I see signage go up for a lot of other things that are actually religiously supported because it's the churches that are putting them up. So we got to be really careful just where we walk on a slippery slope here of what is neutral and what isn't neutral. I think that we've had a lot of discussion on this over the last 3 to 4 years, and I don't really see what council is doing that isn't respecting the various groups that live in this community.
Thank you. Okay. Well, I'll just, for information purposes, especially when we get to the point where the the lack of transparency. This started in 2021 on May the 18th. We had a group come in and approach us and asked us if they could display their pride sidewalk and we would fly a flag. We had debate on it many times in the previous council, this council, and each year the group kept coming back and asking for this. So I take a very big issue with somebody saying the transparency part is, because that's not so. Just because you woke up yesterday and decided you didn't like it, don't throw this council under bus that we haven't discussed it. So right now we have 3 letters, they're all exactly the same. When it comes to the flags, if what you're proposing would mean that we can't have the flag of the Indigenous Reconciliation flag, we can't fly the Ukrainian flag in support of what's happening in the Ukraine right now. There's other community members that have special days and they want to be recognized. So if your goal with this letter writing is to ban everything, I think there would be a big problem, and that doesn't sound like inclusivity to me. So, to move forward, I don't think anybody on council wants to change what our decision has been since 2021. If the public of Vegreville got together and got a petition that 50% of the residents of Vegreville were against this, and we're against every other flag that we're flying, and every time that we acknowledge another special event, be it religious, be it whatever, just remember what you're asking for here. And use the word inclusivity in this way is very disheartening. I take that exactly opposite of what you're trying to represent in this letter. So, we've read the letter. Go ahead, Councillor Lemko.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I typically don't chime in on things like this, but I think it's important at this time. The world's full of hate, dislike for people who do not fit in their ideologies. And I think it's wrong to put something like this together because based on your feelings and dislikes, this is a prime example of that. Does it stop here or does it continue with the next people group that you don't like? It started out with the vaccines. You didn't like vaccines. So then now it's the pride. You know, as a Christian, I may not believe in the pride, but I'm not the judge. I'm a counselor respecting the welcoming, inclusivity, and diversity of our community. And that includes all people groups. And I represent all people, and that's where my vote goes. My personal feelings in on this is not why I vote one way or the other. I vote for the greater good of the community. And I put my personal feelings aside. I am not a judge. I don't judge people. There's only one judge, and we'll all get to meet him one day.
Okay. If everybody's had their discussion, go ahead, Councillor Rudick.
Yeah, I think it's important for the public to remember that we have a responsibility as local elected officials to hold our debate in public, and in fact, all of the conversations that we've had about this are recorded and could go back and see the first time that the conversation was held, because this happened to coincide with being in the middle of COVID. So our meetings were recorded. So all of the debate about this has happened in public and is recorded. The other thing I'd like to draw attention to, the fact that this council, as our strategic goal, mission, was to identify that people are our core, innovation as our strength, and community as our intention. In order to do the things that we view as important for this council, for this community and for the future of Vegreville, that means we need to be able to hold our head high and know that we're actually living up to the things that we promised to do for the electorate. So I'm happy that people are reaching out if they disagree with the decision of council. It is their right to forward these letters, but please understand that one letter does not equate a decision of council, and certainly does not represent the entire community, which is what we are charged to represent, everybody that lives in this community, the businesses and the individuals. So if there are further questions, I'm sure they'll be addressing them to administration and to the elected officials that are sitting at this council table, but it's important that we continue to represent all of Vegreville.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Bullock.
So I'd like to thank everybody that wrote the letters, and we do listen to everything that comes across to us. So I don't want anybody to be disheartened by anything by writing a letter. By all means, write a letter. But when you do write the letter, make sure you check back all the facts and stuff like that, so you know, or maybe even ask. You could have been directed to some of the information of where it's been discussed before, because it sounds like the letter's somewhat uninformed. So, but thank you for your letter. We encourage letters. Always welcome to read them. And healthy debate is good. Hateful debate isn't.
Okay, we have a motion in front of us to receive and file. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, next up, piece of correspondence from the MD Minburn Foundation.
Thank you, Your Worship. This letter is from the MD Minburn Foundation regarding the Homestead Lodge Expansion Renovation Project, a one-time municipal equity contribution. Dear MD of Minburn Foundation stakeholders, at the April 19th, 2024 board meeting, MD of Minburn Foundation board members confirmed their decision to proceed with option 1 as per municipal partner presentation November 23rd, 2023 by consultant Derek Weiss. The one-time municipal equity contribution of $4.7 million will be calculated for each municipality based on the current provincial equalization assessment report. The Homestead Lodge Expansion Renovation Project will be submitted to the province for AHPP funding, the Affordable Housing Partnership Program, in September of 2024, and will proceed should the foundation be successful in their submission. Communication advising of the status of AHPP funding application will be forwarded to municipalities to assist in their budgeting process. Please feel free to contact myself should you have any questions or comments regarding this project. Thank you. Regards, Mariel Brodziak, Executive Director.
Okay. Take a motion to receive and file a letter from Foundation. Councillor Curtis makes the motion. Any discussion? Councillor Lemko, you want to tell us what the plan is, how we're moving forward over there with the Minburn Foundation?
You bet. The Minburn Foundation has been, for the last year and a little bit, looking at the expansion of the facility to include 62 new units. That comes as a cost. We've had a consultant prepare us to get to the point where we now have a project manager and an architect recently hired, and we're moving forward with this submission, which should be in this fall, September, for the CMHC and the Alberta government's funding. As part of that, the options to look at this was around, it's about 31 million and change. And the annual requisitions, the decision was made to go with what was our option 1, which is a loan of 13,200,000, and then the provincial AHPP was 10 million, and the municipal equity we went with option 1, which is 4.7 million, and then option 2 was 7.1. The annual requisition was 650,000 for option 1 and 500,000 for option 2. Now, the difference between the 500,000 and the 650,000 requisitions is about $13 a resident for per year, which why we went with the 4.7. And we're proceeding forward with this, and I believe council's behind us on this, from my understanding. Otherwise, we would not be going this far. And everything's going to be ready for September submission. Now, that doesn't mean anything. The foundation's putting out 500,000 of their reserves to put together the application for submission, so that the future of the residents of here and the surrounding area, those people who will need old age spaces, we want to be prepared for that, because the baby boomers are going to be retiring in magnificent numbers. So we want to be prepared, and hopefully that clears up a little bit.
Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead, Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Lemko. It's a good explanation. I was just looking at this right now as being kind of a prime example. If somebody just tunes in tonight, they think we didn't have any debate on this subject, when actually on our last ledge meeting, we actually had really good, interesting discussions on this at quite some length. But when it gets around to making the vote, I'm kind of burnt out of all of that discussions, because I made up my mind. You know, I feel very comfortable on this. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Riddick.
And to that point, there was a question raised last time about who ultimately has access to a lodge that is that is run by a foundation that is largely comprised in terms of the board component and management of the facility by municipalities, the largest shareholders being the County of Minburn and the Town of Vegreville. And there are other foundations that have made residential requirements, so namely the holding of spots for residents from the communities that are funding and building a facility such as this. So there are other examples provincially that that is something that we can do and we can put in place, understanding the trepidation that if we build a facility that is intended for meeting the needs of our area, we want to make sure that our area residents have first shot at those rooms, no different than as it currently stands. For example, it's meant for those 65 and up, but if there is vacancy available on a permission basis and the determination of the board and or the executive director, somebody under the age or outside the area could be considered. So that is something that we'll look at as we move forward. We've got some amendments to our bylaws and some of our regulations that we'll be doing at the same time.
Go ahead, Councillor Waller.
Just a comment to Councillor Rudick. Thank you very much. That is something interesting to know. And of course, again, it just comes down to looking at being responsible for the tax dollars that we've had to put in and making sure that there is the spot. It again isn't about suggesting we would ever encourage a place to sit empty at a time just because we didn't have to fill. However, I actually had an interesting conversation on this between the legislative meeting and now, and it was with somebody from our neighboring county who brought forward the concern of how many other county areas are seeing closures of some of their lodging facilities. So this is public knowledge, so I think it's fair to say there has been a lot of people concerned, for example, about Mandare's announcement with Father Felix. And the comment that was made to me was actually outreach from somebody outside of our county, and we were discussing this exact thing where they said, interestingly enough, there's a reduced number of lodges that are now in their county, a county in which they've paid almost their entire life through their property taxes, a collection of a requisition, but they may not be able to go there. So it kind of factors back to what we were discussing, that, you know, there might be need for a little bit of discussion because a different county has actually collected funding for years, and if they only have one area that actually can provide, they very well be coming to other zones. So I just appreciate that update, and I think that it's just a bit of responsible planning to maybe have that discussion with that. Thank you.
Sorry, just as follow-up to that question then too, with specific reference to Father Felix, because it is slated to close, I think December 31st of this year, some of the residents have already made the move to come here because we have space in the facility, and some are coming over the next number of months that they've already made the commitment to come here. The challenge with lodges across the province is not something solely a Vegreville or a Mundare or other facility concern. There are some differentiation in terms of the facilities. This facility is owned and maintained by the foundation. The facility in Mundare, for example, or Manville or Innisfree that we manage are actually owned by the province, and the province has been notoriously negligent to put any money into those facilities. So it's a bit of a challenge because we, as foundations, end up managing infrastructure pieces that are out of date, and in this case, most lodges are very small. So this is where we're at a challenge to be able to, no different than we did the presentation or had our consultant make the presentation to all the municipalities with vested interest in the foundation, to understand that the lodge review that's currently underway with the province will have a report that will come out, but there are a number of different issues that have coincided with the moving forward of our project here is that lodges traditionally have been built with a different mentality. The 1960s model of a very small room without their own bathroom facility or bathing facilities is not something that the current senior population is looking for. And that's part of the reason why our renovated rooms are full right away, because they're bigger and they have their own bathing facilities at the lodge. All that to say that, as you heard in our report, it was built to feed under 30 people, and it currently feeds twice as many. It's a facility that is one of the oldest in the province, and they do a great job of providing fantastic care there, but it needs to be an update, and that's part of the reason why moving forward at the same time the province is moving forward with additional affordable housing spaces, a lodge review. At the same time, there are other facilities that are closing down. Seems like the right choice to be able to build for a community for the future.
Okay, well, like at our last LEDS meeting, I brought up the fact that there needs to be something in place in the criteria when we're taking people in, that somehow the balance is weighed more to the municipalities that are actually in on the requisition and on their tax bill. I mean, I don't know, is the county of Lamont still collecting money on their tax notice for a facility that's closing?
Certainly.
Certainly they are. So my expectation, which I think is fair, is that we change a little bit of the wording, that we weigh more to accepting new residents that are from the county, the village of Innisfree, Manville, or the town of Vegreville, because we're the ones that are paying this on our bill. And I know there's going to be times when there's nobody there and there's empty rooms. But we hear of these horror stories all the time that people are taking their loved ones 200 miles away to be in a lodge because there's nothing close. And again, I just want to reflect it, and I don't know what the bylaw says or how you guys do it there. So go ahead, Councillor Lemko.
Yes, Your Worship. At the last meeting of the foundation, which was last week, this topic was in discussion, and all members of the foundation board agreed that this will be a policy put in place and reviewed to ensure that your residents here and within the county and areas here will have a priority on the rooms. And we'll probably have to look at this bylaw a few times before we get it right, but it's in the works.
Excellent. Okay, so we have a motion to receive and file the report from the foundation, the Minburn Foundation. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. We have no financials today, CAO Ling?
No, not this meeting.
Okay, so we're moving to business. We're gonna go to Manager Kuznick. You have the floor, my friend.
Oh, well, thank you, Your Worship, and through Your Worship to all the council, request for council decision. I'm sure you've all had a chance to look it over. It's pretty straightforward. Just asking for some funds to be transferred out of our reserves to pay for studies on both of our ice plants. So they'll do a total arena audit for the multiplex and for the Wally Fadoon Arena, and that'll give us their life cycle on how long they'll think our equipment will last. And it's easier for us to plan and focus on what we need to get repaired and what to fix.
Okay, so we have a reserve together with the Heather Curling Club, and I'm sure it's topped up right now to what the reserve can hold. Or is your plan to approach them about using some money of that reserve for the rink?
If that's the direction you'd like us to go in, yeah, without a doubt, it is one option.
Did we put money in a reserve this year, which we have been doing for years, for that ice plant reserve at the curling rink? Does anybody know that?
The reserve for the multiplex is actually sitting, it's higher than what its max is supposed to be, or what we said we would contribute to half with the Heather Curling Club. So there is enough funds in there to cover both the Wally Fadoon Arena ice plant and the multiplex ice plant, should council choose to go that way.
So our portion of the contribution to the reserve for the ice plant at the Heather Curling Club, I don't know if they made their contribution because it's at the max that it's supposed to be. But if we've put money away for that reserve, which is over qualified today, can we not use that money that's in the budget?
That is actually where the recommendation has the money coming out of. So that we recommend town council approves the $5,344 from the operating reserve facilities life cycle to the Parks and Recreation budget to cover the cost of the arena audit and life cycle reports for the arena and the multiplex. And that is that specific fund.
That's that reserve.
Yes.
Okay, does everybody understand that? Okay, well, I'll take a motion for the recommendation. Councillor Worrell makes the motion. So, Dan, on this study, we're going to try to find out the lifespan as we move forward with the fact gathering on a new rec center and what it would take us to get through the next 4 to 5 years with both those facilities. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Your Worship.
Okay.
Just gives us some information to better make our own decisions, so.
Okay. Councillor Rudick.
Can you, I don't know if you know this offhand, but do you know the last time that a life cycle was done on the plants? You don't know that offhand? No. Okay. But
Couldn't answer you that. I haven't found one, and I've been looking for it, so I do know our multiplex is about 15 years past its life cycle. So it's just good to see where we sit so we can make some decisions.
okay, thank you.
And will you be sharing this plan with the Heather Curling Club that we're taking a look at the ice plant for the future, next 4 to 5 years?
Yep, I'll definitely be reaching out to them.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion for the recommendation? Carried. Thank you. Next up, Director Lefebvre.
Thank you, Worship. I have before you a request for council decision. The topic is the encroachment policy. Proposal is to rescind encroachment policy 2015-04 and approve new encroachment policy MOS 2009. The background is the current encroachment policy 2015-04 has been reviewed and several changes were required to be made, including formatting, removal or procedural items, and removal of the enforcement section. The Infrastructure Planning and Development Department redrafted the current policy to conform with the policy number GOV 1001, Developing Policies and Procedures. There were no changes made to the current rules set out in the encroachment policy 2015-04. However, the IP&D Department is recommending rescinding the current document and that the new draft encroachment policy be approved. Our communication strategy is the revised policy will be posted on the Town of Vegreville's website and all our social media platforms. Recommendation is being made that Town Council rescind encroachment policy 2015-04, and furthermore, recommendation is being made that Town Council approve encroachment policy MOS 2009.
Okay, take a motion for the recommendation. Councillor Barry makes the motion. Any discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, as I said at Ledge, I've read through the proposal. I think that it still maintains what we intended in the 2015, but the changes that you are proposing will actually give administration a little better tool to work with without being bound by the wording or the confines of a bylaw by taking it to a procedure or policy. So I support it.
Okay. Well, if there's no other discussion, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Next up, CAO Ling.
Thank you, Your Worship. First request for council decision is the Town of Vegreville Library appointment. The proposal is to appoint Linda Wilkinson to the Town of Vegreville Library Board. The members of the Town of Vegreville Library Board have approved the application of Linda Wilkinson to serve on the library board. They are recommending that Linda be appointed to the Town of Vegreville Library Board to serve on a term of 3 years, effective immediately, with the possibility of an extension for an additional 3-year term. With the appointment of Linda to the board, there will be 2 positions remaining to bring the board to full complement. For communication strategy, a letter will be drafted to the Town of Vegreville Library Board and Linda Wilkinson acknowledging her appointment to the board. So the recommendation is that Town Council approve the appointment of Linda Wilkinson to the Library Board for a term of 3 years, starting May 13th, 2024, with the possibility of an extension for an additional 3 years.
Okay. Who would like to make the motion for this recommendation? The Library Board Counselor. Counselor Wawa makes the motion. Any discussion? Go ahead.
Okay, I'd just like to just speak a little bit to how extensive they actually do a process for their selection. And I think it is worth noting that they do have people submit their interest, but they actually ask them a number of questions. They even do an interview with that. And from my understanding, while I wasn't on the interview, Linda would bring with her a lot of experience, potentially some help with grant writing, a few other areas. So I'm really thankful and want to thank her for wanting to put her name forward, and also would encourage that if there are 2 positions that are available, if people are still interested, go on to the website or through the library board to potentially put your name forward. But again, I think it will be a good fit, and I thank Linda for putting her name forward.
Okay, well, I echo that as well. Anybody that's willing to put their name forward and sit on a board in our community and help build the library, and then through that, building our community, we applaud them. So, all those in favor? Carried. CAO Ling, looks like you get another one.
Okay, the next request for council decision is to second the proposed AB municipalities resolution being brought forward by the town of Tofield regarding full-time 24/7 home care support in lodges or supportive living accommodations. The background is at the May 7th, 2024 Legislative Committee meeting, council discussed the request from Mayor Deborah Duick to have the town of Vegreville second the above-titled resolution being put forward at the Alberta Municipalities Fall Convention in September of 2024. The proposed resolution is attached and is requesting that Alberta municipalities advocate for the Government of Alberta to provide funding for full-time home care services in lodges and supportive living environments. In 2024, Alberta municipalities introduced changes to their resolution process, requiring resolutions to be represented by 2 of the following categories: a population less than 2,500, a population between 2,500 and 10,000, and a population greater than 10,000. As Tofield meets the requirements for less than 2,500 in population, council support will validate the resolution and allow it to be considered as the town of Vegreville falls within the 2,500 to 10,000 population range. A communication strategy, the town of Tofield will be notified in writing of the motion to second the proposed resolution in a timely manner to allow Tofield to meet the May 31st, 2024 deadline with Alberta municipalities. The recommendation is that town council provide a motion of support for the town of Tofield and shall act as a seconder to the resolution at the AB Municipalities Convention for full-time, 24/7 home care support in lodges and supported living accommodations.
Okay, thank you. I'll look for a motion to support the recommendation. Councillor Curtis makes the motion. Any discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, it's one we had some good discussion on at Ledge. I do actually think that this is one of the problems with the lodges. I won't call it a problem, but one of the situations where we're at in lodges, they are limited to how much care they can really give when it comes to the health side. And they really do require the home nurses to be able to come in, home care come in and tend to the patients. And I think in order to make this more workable, I support what they call here the full-time home care services, so that the people who live in the lodge have the opportunity to have better care at any time. And it also would, in my opinion, help alleviate the number of times that ambulance attendants are called to the hospital for something that really isn't where they should be called. Sometimes it's just somebody has fallen down, but there's nobody there on staff that is actually permitted to assist them correctly. So if we can have health care, and what this really requires is the Alberta government has to step up and start working with the lodges and changing the lodges to provide better care for those individuals who are in the lodges. Again, as it was said earlier by Councillor Rudick, the lodges were invented in the 1960s, and we're a long ways away from the 1960s, and we have to come to today's residents, to today's care. So that's my opinion.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, well, all those in favor of the recommendation? Carried. Next up, CAO Ling, signing authority.
Thank you, Your Worship. This next request for council decision is the signing authority for Town of Vegreville. And the proposal is to authorize signing authority for the Chief Administrative Officer, the Corporate Services Director, and the Infrastructure Planning and Development Director. The background on this is that while the above-mentioned designated officers already have signing authorities, this request before council is to put all three signing authorities in one motion of council. When opening new bank accounts, except, for example, for land sales, we have to pull three separate resolutions for the bank, and having one resolution to cover all three designated officers would simplify the paperwork for both corporate purposes. The communication strategy on this, written notification and a copy of the approved council meeting minutes will be forwarded to the applicable financial institutions and corporations as required. So the recommendation is that town council authorize the following signing authorities for the town of Vegreville effective May 13th, 2024. Sandra Ling, Chief Administrative Officer, Megan Saskew, Corporate Services Director, and Dale Lefebvre, Infrastructure Planning and Development Director.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion for the recommendation. Councillor Rudick makes the motion. The question is, how come it took so long?
Because we just had to pull all three of them again here the other day, and it's like, we need to make this easier.
Seems like it's common sense. We're shortening up the paperwork for everybody, so. Not a lot of comments on this. Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next up, CAO Ling.
All right, this next request for council decision is, the proposal is to participate in the Alberta Municipalities, the AB Munis Advocacy Campaign to rescind Bill 20 Municipal Affairs Statute Amendment Act. The background on this is Bill 20 was introduced by Minister of Municipal Affairs, the Honourable Rick McIver, to the Legislative Assembly on April 25th, 2024. The bill is currently at second reading is expected to complete the legislative process, including amendments, by May 30th, 2024. Bill 20 not only affects the Municipal Government Act, but also on the MGA. It also proposes amendments to the Local Authorities Election Act, the LAEA. Alberta Munis has highlighted some major concerns with some of the proposed amendments and has advocated publicly and achieved extensive media coverage. AB Munis would like the Government of Alberta to meaningfully engage and listen to municipal leaders about how to improve the LAEA and the MGA. Alberta Municipalities is asking municipalities to advocate for the government of Alberta to rescind Bill 20, the Municipal Affairs Statute Amendment Act, due to concern that Bill 20's proposed legislative amendments will increase divisiveness within council and our community instead of encouraging collaborative decision-making to solve the future challenges our community faces. Prioritize the interests of the provincial cabinet over the interests of the residents of Vegreville. Increase the influence of corporation and unions in municipal government through political donations to local candidates, which will drown out the interest of everyday Albertans whose donations to local candidates, which will drown out the interests of everyday Albertans who cannot afford to donate large sums of money to political campaigns. It'll create tax inequities between individuals and corporations as it relates to donations per municipal candidates. Give power to the provincial cabinet to remove a councillor without clear criteria, which creates an environment where councillors will become more accountable to the provincial government leaders instead of our local residents. Increase costs for property taxpayers by forcing a hand count of election results instead of allowing the use of proven and more cost-effective electronic equipment. Increase costs for property taxpayers by forcing our municipality to create and regularly maintain a permanent electors register. Allow council to claim that they have perceived conflict of interest and avoid making politically challenging decisions in council. Remove our council's ability to determine what studies are needed for each type of development. Without the power to ask developers for that information, our municipality will be forced to fund those studies ourselves and pass the cost on to all existing residents instead of the new development paying for itself. Failed to address the fundamental flaws of the current recall rules, which has destabilized the local political environment. Failed to give municipalities the option to require candidates to file financial disclosures prior to election day. And lead to unforeseen consequences because of the short window without full input from municipal governments, to which Bill 20 was developed. A communication strategy is a copy of the letter will be made available to the media and the public on our town website in the news section. The recommendation is that the town of Vegreville send a letter to the Premier that recommends the Government of Alberta rescind Bill 20, the Municipal Affairs Statute Amendment Act, due to the extensive concerns raised by municipal leaders across Alberta, including the town of Vegreville. Council and the Government of Alberta engage the Government of Alberta engage municipal governments through a collaborative and trust-based consultation process to update the Local Authorities Election Act and Municipal Government Act to assist municipal governments to effectively govern in the interests of their residents and deliver the future needs of each community in Alberta.
Excuse me. Thank you very much. So, before we can start any discussion, this will need a motion. Councilor Rudick makes the motion for the recommendation. Where do you guys want to start at here?
Oh, sure.
Go right ahead.
So what I would say is I was a little bit torn, even on this recommendation, what to do, because I think there's some very valid reasons for Bill 20. I actually think there's some very valid things within it. But I'm always very cautious and skeptical of seeing bills, bylaws, legislation pass and then hope that the operational side of it is correct. or see it amended after the fact. I think that's a harder thing to chase after. So, you know, for me, I look back, and while I think there's certain areas that I can see the rationale and reasoning, I would prefer to see them addressing those individually, as I think that unfortunately this bill would have unintended consequences, particularly on some of the smaller communities, and maybe wasn't even set to address us necessarily. So for me, while I definitely see some of the need, I certainly can support us joining into this campaign to say that in this current state, it's not the way we could support it as a whole. And again, that's not necessarily saying throw the baby out with the bathwater. It is saying amend it so we don't have to face a problem down the road.
And I think that the recommendation is to rescind it right now. I think we can all agree that there is some points in Bill 20 that are good, that make sense, move forward. But there's some overreaching here within this bill that doesn't make any sense, to have the ability to come to a municipality and change the bylaws that local elected officials have put together, that, you know, that they know their community better than the minister, you know, to pull a councillor out for their reasons. And the funding for elections, it would really change in small communities when you can have somebody that has more money every year donating $5,000 in 4 years each year to a campaign, or unions jumping in. And, you know, it's just things that I think they're trying to lump us all in with large cities right now, and the problems that they're seeing there, and the political arm wrestling that's going on with large urban areas. But overall, Bill 20 does takes a lot of power away from local, you know, elected municipal officials, and they understand that, you know, 70% of us municipalities are against this, at least, and they still want to keep trudging forward. And again, I want to say that there is some things within the bill that are good. So go ahead, Councillor Berry.
Thank you, Worship. I'll echo that for sure. I view this to some extent, it's contrary to the philosophy of the governing party, because they say they're grassroots. They want to be right down to grassroots. And what is more grassroots than a town passing its own bylaws and working with its own people and discussing and understanding the needs of their community? I worked under provincial governments for a lot of years, a lot of premiers, a lot of ministers. And my feeling was often, although they were all very great people, they were a minister of something one time and then a minister of something else the next time. And in my case, sometimes they were even in a third department. And each time they changed department, they were suddenly an expert in that department. No. I think the important thing is that local councils in a municipality have way better chance of understanding the needs of their community than any minister, especially when so many of them come from cities. And it's a little bit, and I'm going to be blunt, I don't care, to a little bit the extent that when one child acts up in the classroom, you scold the entire class. I say that if they're having problems with the cities, deal with the cities and let the rural communities understand how they can better serve their own municipalities. So I can't support a lot of stuff that's in this bill.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments? Councillor Rudick.
So I've shared some of my thoughts on Bill 20 with council in the form of a letter. The parts that are most concerning to me, besides the fact that a motion of closure was brought forward today, stating that there was going to be 1 hour of debate on this bill. It's one of the largest pieces of legislation in the province, and it affects every single community across the province, which is concerning. Particularly given that both provincial associations are categorically against the majority of the changes here. And some of the things that are most impactful are excluding local decision-making in its truest sense. The fundraising component is actually one of the most concerning. So if for example, right now, we were to declare that we were running for the next election, which is going to be in October of 2025, private businesses could donate up to $5,000 per candidate every year. So in fact, it could have been, you know, the next election starts the day after the election. So you could accumulate per candidate $20,000 by donating $5,000 per year, and you would never have to disclose that until after the election. To imagine that we don't have the responsibility to be answering to our citizens that live in our community right next door to us, that we meet at the co-op store, or that we have coming up to us at community events, and that would be the same if we were receiving up to $20,000 from one business, I think would change the complexion of what exists on this council, which I think is highly problematic. The other part of it is that, even you use the example, there was a regulation that unions could not donate, and it's now been opened up again. But even in that instance, individuals are limited to what they can contribute, and so are unions, but businesses are not. All to say, none of that needs to be disclosed until after the election, which is a problem. The other one that is really concerning to me too is the idea of conflict of interest. So for example, as it stands right now, we cannot remove ourselves from a decision if it's controversial or potentially going to upset the public, unless we have a pecuniary interest, which means that we are personally, financially benefiting from making that decision. In the future, you don't need to do that. This proposal says that I could just decide, this is too controversial, I have a conflict of interest. Well, that's not actually transparent decision-making. We had a discussion today on a number of different topics, and if I felt like this might not be popular with the public, I don't get to publicly debate and make a decision is really wrong. Why are you here if you're not willing to make your position and your point of view publicly apparent for the people that elected you? And it really, at its base, I think it's disingenuous to say that this is protecting the democracy of Albertans. I think it's undermining it, because research has shown time and again that people are most trusting of their local decision makers. That means the people here. They can see that we're making decisions about allocating funds for street sweeping or building parks or doing a life cycle on an ice plant. And the things that we decide here are immediately evident to our residents. There's a proximity here for the decisions that we make and the people that we serve that isn't there for provincial and federal government, and I cannot support the idea of overreach. If the provincial government doesn't like the federal government overreaching into their playground, similarly, they cannot like the idea of overreaching into our playground. And I find this highly concerning. There are many points in this bill that are very problematic, but at the very basis, anybody that feels like fundraising as it currently is proposed in here is going to be helpful for democracy, they are sadly mistaken. Because the idea that local councillors would be responsible to somebody outside of this community is highly problematic. That's very concerning to me.
Thank you very much. Well said. And again, the fact that any member of council could just remove themselves on a tough situation on a vote just because they just feel that, you know, and I don't even understand why some of these changes are being put in here, because nobody knows better than a local elected official on what their community needs are. And again, it's not, the whole thing ain't bad. It needs some changes, but go ahead, Councillor Bullock.
Well, another thing, if they're gonna start just don't have any real great reason for moving some council, I think they might have a little trouble finding people in small communities that'll even wanna run for all the big rewards we get for doing this.
Well, and again, Councillor Riddick is right. You could have some outside interests that could fund somebody you know, 2 or 3 different ways, and you could have somebody in our community that could end up with $35,000, $40,000 over the 4-year span to run a campaign. And you know what? And we know that, you know, like signs and running huge campaigns, it probably works, you know. So again, let's just keep the authority local. And, like I know RMA and Alberta Munis were both dead against this, and the province just has no will to listen on this, so hopefully we'll have a conversation with Minister McIver and, well, hopefully they're willing to make some changes. That's the last thing I heard, but you said today they want a closed discussion in 1 hour.
It was a closure motion on Bill 20 was on notice, so I didn't listen to the debate. But that is, again, disheartening that such a major piece of legislation like this, and so again, I'll wind the clock back up to the fall. There was public consultation requested on the Local Elections Authorities Act and the Municipal Government Act. Well, to be very frank, for the average person to put in, to provide feedback, I think most of us here sent in our answers, but the questions weren't even very clear, and they certainly didn't have this direct link to the results. So we did provide public consultation, so Minister McIver has stated that they sought public consultation, but I will say that in speaking with the president of both provincial associations, public consultation for them was less than a 5-minute phone call for one and a 7-minute phone call for the other. And that feels more like information sharing, not consultation. And in this instance, I don't know that they've had the opportunity to get feedback from everybody because this is a fairly new announcement.
Go ahead.
Yes, to me, it kind of sounds like the decision's already been made.
Well, it has, so, well, we'll see if they're gonna try to vote on it tomorrow. I think that they have until the end of the month. So the bell rings tomorrow and they're voting on this. I don't know, Nago, the mayors and rees of northeastern Alberta, were meeting with all of the MLAs on Thursday, and we're having a frank conversation about healthcare, but this is a big issue too for our MLAs, and we, as Nago representing the Northeast, we feel one of the reasons that there is a UCP government right now is that we supported their MLAs. So we'll have a very frank discussion with them, and if it's not being rescinded, then what we need to do is make sure that everybody's hearing our voices with the changes that we need to be made within this bill. Okay, so we have a motion for the recommendation. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you all on that. You certainly could.
Sorry, we did, so the motion was that we engage in advocacy, but will we be sending the letter to a number of different elected officials, including our local MLA, Minister McIver, and the Premier, or just unsure that we want to make sure we're directing administration in the clearest way possible?
As per the recommendation, we will send the letter to the Premier. We'll CC the, Minister McIver, and we'll CC our MLA, Jackie Armstrong Hominiak. I think we will probably CC Alberta Munis and RMA as well.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Who's doing the bylaw?
Your Worship,
Director Lefebvre.
what I'll do, the bylaw of 03-2024 for the purpose of adopting the municipal development plan was read. Its first reading on April 22nd. I can just go through it quickly. It's a short cover just to refresh everybody. It is under the provisions of the Municipal Government Act, RSA 2000, Chapter M26. The Council of the Town of Vegreville may pass bylaws and may make provisions that it deems necessary to carry out the purpose of the bylaw. And whereas the Council of the Town of Vegreville deem it desirable and necessary to adopt a municipal development plan. Now therefore, the Council of the Town of Vegreville, the Province of Alberta, duly assembled enacts as follows. The short title is, the bylaw may be cited as the Municipal Development Plan Bylaw. The generals that the Town of Vegreville Municipal Development Plan, being the document attached hereto as Schedule A, is hereby adopted. 3.1 is Bylaws 01-2012 and amendments hereto is hereby repealed. The effective date of this bylaw shall come into full force in effect upon the date of the third and final reading, and again, the first reading was done on April 22nd. It is here now for its second and third.
Okay, so are we good to go with this, or are we gonna have an amendment?
An amendment has been brought to council and reviewed. So the amendment needs to be read out. The amendment we're proposing is not an amendment that would change a current district or zoning. It is the municipal development plan, as we know, is a guide for administration and council to lead the direction of the future of our community. And there is a current plan in this document, and there is a future or proposed. So we're taking an area that we will define out more as like Northeast 13D 5215 west of the 4th. And we'll take that proposal for future, which is commercial and highway commercial, and go to an institutional, community institutional. When we look at our document, the municipal development plan, the current plan, which is approved by the land use bylaw, shows your C1, C2, C3s, the 4s, the C3A for ag, the highway commercial, in all the detail, because land use bylaws are very much about detail. The MDP is a guide, so when you look at the future planning, it will just have commercial, it'll be yellow, because it's different types of it. So what we're doing is taking a general commercial area, we're taking one portion of it and proposing that potentially in the future it could be institutional. And that's what we're doing. So we're not changing a district today, we're preparing ourselves down the road that'll give us the ability to change that. Having that done ahead of time, if we're going to do that, means we don't have to go through the process of amending the MDP, which could take 2 to 3 months, and then the process of amending the land use bylaw. Instead of a 6-month process, we can cut it down to 1 3-month process. It's just good planning for council.
Okay, thank you very much for the explanation. Go ahead, Councillor Rwala.
I would like to bring forward the motion for the amendment that was just discussed and to be read as a motion to amend bylaw 03-2024, reading that the town council amend bylaw 03-2024 to include the redistricting for future land use of Northeast 13D-52-15-4 from commercial and highway commercial to community institutional, including schools, as outlined in bylaw 03-2024, Schedule A.
Okay, so we're gonna be voting on the amendment. Okay? All those in favor? Carried. So now I'd like to take a motion for the second reading with the amendment included. Councillor Bullock makes the motion. Any discussions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. And I would now take a motion for the third and final reading. Councillor Lemko makes the motion. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next up, council reports. We'll start with Councillor Borba.
I got it open, even though I didn't have it quite open yet. Thank you, Your Worship. So going back a little bit, I've had a few meetings. On the 23rd, I joined most of council for a meeting with one of our local condo boards. On the 24th, I attended training for the library board with Ken Allett, and it was really, really informative as somebody newer to the group, being able to kind of be given an overview of the way different municipalities work, a way the actual legislation works as far as how the budgeting process would go, and what the requirements are of the municipality whenever there's a municipal library. So I do think that it's interesting, and in our discussion, we certainly said that we need to see some updates to some of the provincial information and the stats, because realistically, right now, a municipal library, of course, this is not realistic, but by definition of what actually would then make you an official municipal library and qualify for the provincial funding, the per capita requirement of a municipality is actually $2 per capita. In this day and age, that's not reasonable in any stretch, but it is interesting to hear that. And so in our discussion, I think it was a good sign of the cooperative work that has happened within the town, be it that we do a grant every year, as well as providing stuff that in our discussion with Mr. Allen really explained to us that is in addition to, because some communities will do singly the grant, and it will actually, under the Act, have the libraries responsible for their own accounting, their own payroll, their own finding of buildings and the utilities and whatnot that come with it. That is something that we work cooperatively with them. So, you know, I can see that the town has shown a real keen interest in providing library and library services. But again, that was very good to be able to go through and just get a little bit more information. Some of our local kids were involved in public speaking on the 27th. Some Vegreville kids, but the public speaking that I got to judge was actually held in Holden. So I was thankful to be asked as a town councillor, and it was a lot of fun. I always enjoy the public speaking, and I can tell you that the younger they are, the better they are. I'm not even kidding. Some of the stuff that these guys come up with, it was great, and I think we all better watch, because there's some future councillors coming up from some of these young guys. On May 1st, I was at the new staff welcome pancake breakfast and then safety meeting, and I kind of always enjoy that. It's nice to see everybody and bright and early be able to give some breakfast back to the staff members. On the 2nd, I had a chamber board meeting, and the chamber is pushing forward on a number of the initiatives, of course, still with the planning as we discussed with the 50th. But one of the things that I was also going to just mention from that meeting is they're really taking a good look at other communities and where their parades are, and I think it'll be nice because, of course, the float that comes from the chamber, a lot of people recognize it directly with the town of Vegreville, be it that it has the egg, and they're looking at the different schedule and wanting to get out and about through the community. I met on May 7th for a plan of service meeting with the library, and that's a small additional group that has come off of the main library board to look at the different services that will be provided going into future. So it's part of a strategic plan, not its whole plan. But I like some of the approach that is being looked at is identifying different groups that could represent throughout the community. And then within those groups, the discussion was of having not only someone within that group that currently uses the library, but also somebody that doesn't, so that the question becomes posed to them, why don't you, and what could potentially, or is there anything that could potentially be offered that would make you want to use the service more? So I was very excited to be able to be part of that, and I did want to mention one other little initiative that has come from the libraries. It was more at the first meeting, but just as a piece of information, our librarian has been really working hard to provide some additional reading material, multicultural reading material. That has been one of the things that she has looked at, of course, when they're talking about redistributing the space, because right now as it works, they're only able to display some of these different pieces when it's a certain heritage day, but not all the time. So it's kind of where they're putting it out as a display, then putting things away. So that's part of the reason why they're wanting to redo their space and reset it so that those kinds of materials are available all the time. And they try really hard to speak with some of the groups coming in, and it was actually from our library that I first heard about the fact that we had a family from Egypt here. So just, you know, a couple of little interesting points that came out of that. I had the legislative meeting later that afternoon along with the CAO Council quarterly meeting, tonight's public hearing, and the council meeting. And I just have two other little things I wanted to throw in that aren't technically meetings, Your Worship. One, just a plug to remind everybody that the Lobster Fest is coming up from the Rotary Club on June 13th, and I understand it's sometimes hard in the spring and summer to go to these events because there's a lot going on, and you know, I know cost is always a consideration, but I just think it's important to always remind the public of how interactive our Rotary group is, how many, you know, it's not easy to get volunteers right now, and they seem to hold a pretty strong volunteer group, and they've been part of a lot of initiatives within our community. So if you're able to, certainly I would suggest try to go out, support this initiative of theirs. And then I just had one other item I wanted to bring forward. I had an opportunity to meet today with a group representing the Physiotherapy Association. So in this, I told them I was going to be bringing this tonight because I got to meet with a Canadian rep as well as the Alberta rep. I didn't know that the physiotherapy, which was originally part of like their overseeing body being the college, just like we see with the other entities, that they have broken away from that. And in breaking away from it, they have their Alberta Association for Physiotherapists. So I was meeting with the CEO today. So they talked about some of their work that they need to do to get ahead a little bit further on the advocacy, just on a provincial level. But just letting everyone know that May is their official advocacy month. And so if, you want to do a shout out at any point to, for physiotherapy, now would be the time to do it because it is in May. But there's a couple of things that we discussed that I found quite interesting, and then maybe there'll be things that we need to discuss for municipal advocacy in the future, which is that how often they are not automatically included in some funding or reimbursements that go on. We all assume that physiotherapy is automatically part of a health treatment, but it's not automatically part of the health treatment, unfortunately. There are times with that they are not necessarily included in what might be reimbursement for mileage under some seniors programs. They're not automatically included in some health plans. I was actually shocked to find out how in different areas for different employers, depending on the type of health plan they get, they are often lobbed into the same place as you might look at massage or reflexology and those other types. So that's kind of an important thing to note because they had a good discussion with me. We met for almost an hour, and their talk was about seniors. We talked quite a bit about seniors and how automatically the thought when it comes to physiotherapy is we talk about reactionary. So somebody has fallen, we think, okay, after this fall, you need physio. But they actually talked about how we're missing the preventative component. And if we were to be able to factor the physiotherapy in on a more proactive basis, it would actually help with things like seniors' mobility, potentially preventing some of those falls. And we always just think of it as a treatment instead of part of a routine or preventative. So I'm just bringing that forward because I knew tonight we had discussed the motion that, the resolution in regards to seeing in our seniors facilities more home care. And I think that this might be something important that follows in there that let's not forget that advocacy piece. So just shouting out, and if anybody through May wants to send a shout to their physiotherapists, and I would say also that we're very lucky in Vegreville to have option and access because that's not something that is available in all communities. So thank you for the extra time on that I didn't actually ask permission for, but wanted to sneak in.
Well, it worked.
It worked.
Councilor Rudick.
So, since we last met, I joined you to listen to some of the conversation about the Bearland condo meeting. April 29th, I had Vegreville Transportation Services Society, AGM, and general meeting. Just as a piece of information, the chair remains Dwayne Hlatty, the volunteer extraordinaire. But they are looking for additional board members, so their executive will consist of the vice chair, Stacy Menzak, secretary treasurer, Helen Lightwin, who's been there since the formation of VTSS, director Tracy Giffen, myself, and Kevin Lessaway as well. There will be some community announcements and some engagement as they continue to fundraise and do a replacement of their vehicle. But just as a piece of information, they've had some large bequests from the estates of some of their families that they have helped over the years, including one of their tireless volunteers. So some of you may be familiar with Bob Carter, who passed away, who was, again, a tireless volunteer. His wife, before she passed, was also a volunteer with VTSS. But when he passed, he left some funds to VTSS, which they were very happy to receive. So even when they were doing the report for 2023, much of the year was spent pricing out and looking at replacement vehicle options. But again, as a reminder that this is largely operated by the availability of an honorarium paid volunteer, basically, which is not, certainly is a valuable service, but not sustainable in its current format, considering that the driver, both drivers, the chair, who also stands in, and the current driver are both seniors. So happy to see that council is also having conversations about alternate transportation options. But look forward to being able to provide some of that information publicly when they've got a new vehicle and it's been altered, to be able to share that with the public. But they expect that vehicle to be here end of August and available for residents and people looking for transportation to be able to access. May 2nd, there was a webinar for Bill 20 and a subsequent one as well with Alberta Munis. Basically, again, talking about what we spoke about earlier, just ensuring that everybody's completely aware of the ramifications of both the Local Elections Authorities Act, which is included in Bill 20, as well as the Municipal Government Act, both of which have far-reaching consequences. We had our Legislative Committee meeting and the CAO Council quarterly meeting on May 7th. May 9th, we had MD Minburn Foundation meeting, which has been, for me, just a monthly iteration as a board member, and Councillor Lemko has a lot more on his plate as we move through the building process, so he'll have more to share with you there. But suffice it to say that there is a lot of conversation about how to increase the number of residents in that facility. We are upping our number just by virtue of people's changing health realities. But want to make sure that, again, that we continue to make people aware before they need to move what their options are. And reminder to each of us that there is a place that we're going to be moving to at some point, and to ensure that those residences, including the Homestead Lodge, are something that we think about even when we're not living there. I've had a couple of conversations with folks, so I wanted to just pass along a specific thank you to the crew that's been doing the street sweeping. We talked about local decision-making and having somebody come to my door and say thank you specifically to the workers, so I'll pass that along through Director Lefebvre to pass that along, that they appreciated the attention to detail, that they were waiting eagerly to have the amount of sand and silt removed from the crescent, and they're thrilled with how thorough we are. So thank you very much for that. And I also wanted to just pass along a message from somebody who doesn't live in Vegreville that, again, is curious about where we are in the wake of the closure of the immigration center, that they were in the province and they left for some time, and they were part of, they received our advocacy campaign at the time, talking about the need to be able to come back to Vegreville. And I spoke with one of the people that worked with Nichols Applied Management and prepared the original report. And he too was interested to see where we are. And I said we would be sharing that information more publicly in the near future, but that he should be very proud of the fact that his data set that we used to advocate to the federal government, to the National Chambers of Commerce, as well as all of our provincial associations, was incredibly important for us to be able to make the work that we've done in terms of advocacy and the creation of the Prosperity Park. So just wanted to share that with this table too. And tonight's meetings.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bullock.
Thank you, Mayor. On April 23rd, we had our ad hoc transportation committee meeting, so really we're waiting for the response on the Healthy Aging Alberta grant application to help us along with our pilot project. On April 30th, I had a brief meeting with the tourism coordinator down at the Vic, stuff like just sharing some old ice cream scooping tips and how to help the kids make their life a little bit easier. So, and then May 7th, the Legislative Committee meeting, as well as 7th, our CAO Council Quarterly meeting, which I felt was really good. Probably some things that were said in both ways that probably good for everyone to hear the progress we're making. So, good news there. May 8th, I sat in by telephone on the Alberta Municipalities Bill 20 review, and tonight's public hearing and tonight's council meeting. That's all I got.
you. Councillor Curtis.
Thank you very much. Start with me, Tourism Board meeting on April 23rd, and I have a few highlights from that. So they are well on their way to planning our Canada Day event. They're hoping for some sunshine this year compared to the rainstorm of last year. But I know they've reached out to some of the same vendors, food trucks, etc., and they have put in an application for a Royal Canadian Air Force flyby. So hopefully we'll get some jets or something overhead this year. Next up, Wi-Fi at the Pasanka Park. So I think we talked about this in one of our ledge meetings, but we've entered into an agreement with MCS Net to get free Wi-Fi across the park. So, that's the way things are going these days. Everybody wants to be connected. Not only that, but it's, good for security there as well. We've had some vandalism, so the idea of getting some security set up there through the Wi-Fi system may help deter some of those nasty comers to the park. As far as the VIC goes, that opened up on May 2nd with all new staff there this year and with our summer students as well. And as Councillor Wilk alluded to, the ice cream sales are going well. So come on down and get a scoop of ice cream and support. One of our grants, the SCOP grant, we received $20,000 for, and this is going to help us hire photographers, videographers. We're doing the drone footage from areas around town, which is going to help a lot with our advertising, as we kind of mentioned in our last meeting. But I'm looking forward to that because I know there's some cool things you can do with drones, and anything advertised nowadays is, sparkly, special. So looking forward to that. Ag Society has lots going on, as they always do. They received a $100,000 grant for redoing their grandstand. So they've been a lot of volunteer work out there too, cutting and painting and staining and fixing that up. So I'm hoping it looks really good when things start kicking off there this year. They have, as well, have hired some summer students back this year to help out. Where am I at here? The Medieval Festival, although I don't have a date in here for that. Jameson, do you know a date offhand for that? My bad.
Not off the top of my head, but I can find it for you.
It's all right. That's something that's going to be huge here, I think. The group has moved from a different area because they didn't have the same kind of security. Nothing was fenced in. So they came to Vegreville and saw what the Ag Society had to offer. And I think it's going to be huge. I believe that the hotels are already sold out for the event. So it's going to be big.
Good thing you're here already.
So I wish I had the date to tell you, but I'm sure we can get that.
July 13th.
July 13th. Thank you very much. So the fact it's sold out already is awesome. What else do we have here? And one more thing downtown, the spring bingo, so the business bingo, where you can shop and get your card stamped. There's 33 businesses involved this year with some prizes of up to 300 chamber bucks. So get downtown, get stamping, get buying, and support locally. And then we know the food bank too had lost their home. That was a big debate there as well. So I know that they have procured another site to work out of for 6 to 8 months while they still get their feet on the ground, and they're looking for ways to get some funds donated. And their biggest dream right now is they want to try and have a nonprofit village. So they'd like to get a space big enough whether they can raise funds and buy it or rent it, where they can accommodate many different nonprofits all at once, more like a one-stop shop. They find that a lot of people that use one or two of the nonprofits, they circulate around. So if they have that all in one convenient location, we'll save them on rent, and more of that money can go towards helping instead of paying rent and utilities. So it's a very good initiative there. I think the last thing I have is just Go East of Edmonton. It's their biggest travel guide ever. I was going out the week of the meeting. Again, their road trip game is expanding. It was very well received. There's more prizes, bigger prizes. And there's lots of grant money for them for tourism, and they're a very big advocate for this. So that's what I have on the tourism board side of things. And I think the rest of mine, if I can find it here, was the ledge meeting and CAO meeting on the 7th, and then the public hearing and the council meeting tonight.
Well, thank you. It's exciting to hear what's going on with tourism and this medieval day.
I'm excited.
Yeah, should
I
be
didn't
good.
know when it was, but I'm excited.
Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too was present at the Bearland Condo meeting on April the 23rd, and on May the 1st, the staff safety meeting. I thought that was well attended, and I really appreciate going to those. Then on May 6th, we had the VRPHPARC meeting, which some refer to as Doctor Retention and Attraction. Few highlights on that. We're wanting to, for one thing, look at our terms of reference. I think it's a bit outdated, and I'm wondering if CEO Ling would be able to send me a copy of the only existing one, because I don't think we have a copy. And we would like to take a look at it and just see where we're at and where we're going with a lot of the changes in the future. Along with that, the clinic is remaining extremely busy, and we're wanting to ask Alberta Health Services how they do their assessments for what is required in a community. Because I know we're still down a couple of doctors in our community, but we have gained back two. We have a couple of nurse practitioners, and they're helping out a lot. But it appears, it's estimated that we still have around 1,600 patients in the vicinity that don't have a family doctor. So somewheres, us acting as a hub and attracting patients from around a fair ways, I think we're underestimated as to just how many physicians or doctors practicing in the community that our community really needs. And I think that, and we can't try to recruit beyond the number that we're allowed to assign, in a sense, unless they take up private practice. So we're wanting to try and find out more information on that. The hospital is running very well. They actually are full staff, which is very exciting. With a few of the nurses have actually moved to town, some of them in temporary accommodations until they can find housing. We have, it's becoming a bit of a hub here for student nurses as a learning hub. Most of them come from Edmonton, from McEwen, and they come out here and do a period of time, and they're really excited about coming because they get their facilities supplied, residents supplied. So they're coming out here. We have medical students coming from U of A, and they're taking their rural internship portion here. So we're very active in a lot of those different areas. And it's just some good news, and this is one of the things that we want to try and do, is get into more good news. Our Rural Health Week starts on May 27th. So we'll be going through, again, there probably taking some small items and going around to all of the various clinics and healthcare areas and providing them with a thank you of taking photos and giving them maybe a small token of our appreciation. Just taking a quick look here. As part of that as well, and with RPAP, I'll just remind everybody once again that the Skills Day on May the 15th is getting well organized. So that's this week. We'll be having roughly 40-some students that'll come through the hospital. And I appreciate and thank the staff for preparing some of the gift bags for these students. So we'll get that all done. And one of the other areas, we had the Ledge meeting on the 7th and the Council CAO meeting on the 7th. But I want to bring up on May the 8th, I attended once again one of our coin maze planning committees. I know it's not really a council thing for me, it's more a volunteer, but I wanted to make mention of it because there are a few in our community that are spreading rumors that the corn maze has been canceled. And that is very untrue. We have the signage up, we're putting up more signs. The planning is going forward very well. We'll probably be getting the seed in at the end of this month and moving forward from there. We have some good volunteers that are involved in it. And because there's a belief that the museum is closed, that does not mean that the corn maze is closed. So that rumor, I'd like to have it dispelled. We're going to start trying to advertise a little bit more that that is a false rumor. The corn maze is very well and active, and it will occur for the 3 weeks in August or in September. The Ag Society meeting was there, and yes, they've got a lot of stuff planned for the year, and they're moving in great strides on it. The grandstand area should be finished May the 31st in time for the first event dash to the summer, and the chicken races. The chicken races. I wish I could be here. On May the 9th, we're at local sport and event hosting grant that was given to the Minor Soccer Association for when they will be hosting the Lakeland Cup this year on June the 21st. I think people would be impressed by how many kids are actually involved in soccer this year again. It's well over 300. Tuesday nights in particular is a good time to drive by and just see the swarm of kids that are out in those fields from U5 all the way up. And every week there's teams coming from other communities to play games here. And I think that's good for our tourism, if you want to put it that way. And even like this Sunday, a team from Stettler, U19 girls, on Mother's Day, brought their families and came to town, and our U19 girls played them at 11 o'clock and then played them again at 1 o'clock as exhibition games, just so that Stettler would have the ability to play some games before so that they can qualify for provincials. So there's a lot of activity in town, and I look across the field and I see the baseball diamonds are busy. A lot of people out there during the week. So I think spring and summer is a good time for various sporting teams that come into town. And then tonight's public hearing and regular council meeting.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lemko.
Thank you, Your Worship. On April 23rd, I attended the condo board meeting here in council chambers. April 23rd, I attended the VTAB meeting, Vegreville Tourism Advisory Board meeting, and Councillor Curtis covered that quite well. April 24th, MD of Midland Building Committee meeting, and this meeting was to shortlist the RFPs from the architects. On the 26th, 2 days later, I attended the Minburn Foundation meeting, which was another, just a regular board meeting. The 29th, I again was at the Minburn Homestead Lodge, and I was fortunate enough to attend the birthday celebration for Jessie Bodner. And she's 104 years old, and spry as if she was in her 70s maybe. No, she's in great shape. I enjoyed a piece of birthday cake, and shared time with all the residents that were there and family of Jessie. So kudos to her and the foundation. May 1st, I was at the safety meeting breakfast at the social center, and I must say that I've been going to these breakfasts quite some time, but this was the best sausages that were ever cooked, I think. Are you done? And then on May 1st, again, right after the sausage cook-off, I attended the MDM Minburn Building Committee meeting where we interviewed the shortlisted architects. Now, I'm not a know-it when it comes to building a 62-unit lodge and all the things that are required in building a lodge. I'm not in development or anything like that. I'm just a counselor that sits on the board. The learning curve is very steep when it comes to that. And not only that, we have foundation-related duties as counselors. But I'm sort of learning about what it takes to put a building up in the lodge business. And we're talking with architects, and we're all doing this all to put together a proposal in hopes that it becomes a reality. So, yeah, lots of time spent at MDM Minburn. May 7th, Ledge meeting. In the evening was the CAO council meeting, which was a very, very informative and great discussions. May 8th, I attended the Vegreville Stands with Ukraine meeting. Now, another committee that works tirelessly for the support of the Ukrainians. Even though there's no new families coming, but the support they give to the existing families here is just unbelievable. They hosted a bowling afternoon at here at the bowling alley, and I must say there's a lot of Ukrainian people who know nothing about bowling. But they got to participate in it, and it was interesting, but it was more of a social gathering for these people where they can spend time with each other. And other events that these people put on, the Vegreville Stands with Ukraine Committee, is just, there's the newest family here is the lady's going to have a baby here. I'm surprised she hasn't had it yet, but it's very shortly. They've already planned a baby shower. The committee to host the baby shower. Like, these people care so much. And in saying that, there's a Ukrainian-Canadian Congress has an award. It's the Hetman Award, and it's the Ukrainian Crisis Humanitarian Aid Award that they put out. And it's for recognizing extraordinary Albertans whose volunteer efforts have contributed to the well-being of supporting displaced Ukrainians in Alberta, or supported humanitarian aid for Ukrainians in Ukraine impacted by the war. It's a special award due to the extraordinary crisis in Ukraine because of the Russian war. This award is presented at the Hetman Gala Awards banquet. I'd like to recommend that we apply for this award on behalf of the Vegreville Stands with Ukraine Committee. These people are more than deserving of this award. I think these people just go above and beyond. It's what the dream back when this happened was, that it was a committee of the community and we would support their efforts. And boy, they've sure stood up to the cause. May 9th, I was at the Homestead Lodge again for MDM Minburn meeting. May 9th, I also was at the incentive presentation for the Vegreville Minor Soccer for the Lakeland Cup. And it was just nice to talk to the executive of the Soccer Association and the challenges they're facing with changes to the rules and all that, and the changing of the size of the fields and all that. And they continue to forge ahead and do the work. So kudos to them. What a marvelous crew. Tonight's public hearing meeting and tonight's council meeting, Your Worship, and that's my report.
Okay, thank you very much. So, I too attended the meeting with the members of the Bearland Condo Association, and it was good discussion, and the points that they brought up earlier, I brought back to council, so they got to hear what our answers were. So, on the 24th of April, I had a Teams meeting with an MLA in the northeastern Alberta and the Minister of Immigration, There was a lot of stuff going on the ledge that day. The bell kept ringing and the minister kept running. So hopefully, when the ledge closes for the summer at the end of May, we're going to be able to host some of his staff members and some probably Alberta Health officials, and we'll get a little better handle on what we can do to help with some of the Ukrainian people that are in town. And hopefully we'll have a representation from our MP's office at this meeting, and we'll host the rest of the municipalities in Nago in northeastern Alberta, and we'll all come with our questions. Everybody has their own doctors' retention and recruitment outfits too, and we all have questions, again, regarding immigration. So the minister promised us some more time, so we'll get that done. Hopefully it will go good. On Friday, the 26th, we had another economic development meeting here in town with Dale staff and Jameson and Sandra and myself. And on the 29th, the Monday morning, I had a meeting in Dale's office regarding some building permit issues that a citizen in town was having, and I mean, it was explained to him very well moving forward what needed to be done, but for some reason I went in and found out and told him the same information, and they're working through it right now. On the 30th, I met with the mayor of North Battleford and the mayor of Lloydminster, in Lloydminster, with the highest ranking Via Rail official that we've been able to meet up with so far, and we're still working on our advocacy, trying to move Via onto the northern line. There's a lot of reasons they have why they wouldn't, but I think we're making some progress there, so we'll see how that goes. On May 1, the staff pancake breakfast was good. I'm glad that everybody showed up and they could, and they were some of the best sausages we've had in a while, for sure. And it was nice. It's nice, always nice to see all the staff together, and they weren't throwing food back at us, so we were good. It wasn't that bad, so we worked out well. On the 7th of May, we met with some interested business opportunities. Some people are looking for some opportunities in town, and we had a very good meeting with them. Then we had our ledge meeting, the CAO quarterly meeting. On the 8th, I sat in on the Alberta Munis webinar. The 9th, the John S. Batouk Water Commission meeting. And then on Friday afternoon, Sandra and Jameson and myself sat in with Arctic Rescue, the company that's trying to set up a training center here in town, and we'll listen to where they're moving, and looks like things are moving forward with them, and we're going to meet the newcomer center on Wednesday or Thursday? Wednesday, yeah. And then public hearing here tonight and the council meeting. I also have a request from the Rotary Club. In the last couple of years, we have done some bartending for them at their Lobster Fest. So that's June the 14th, and I'm wondering if we could get a crew that may want to help out again this year. So if you can, please let me know at the end of the meeting, and I will let them know. 13th. Well, I was just going on what Councillor Orawa said. She said 14th. Well, you said 13th.
It happens.
So, okay, so this is the 13th then. Well,
Trying to keep all the lobster for yourself.
yeah. But yeah, if you can, let me know, and I'll get back to the Rotary Club as quickly as I can. Okay, so that's all that we have. Is there any other business of council? It's getting fairly late. We do have a closed session item to move forward. So at this time, I would like to entertain a motion to go into closed session. Councillor Bullock makes the motion, and at 8:46, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you.